White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre trying to downplay fears of a recession yesterday. Watch.
Right now, we don't see a recession. Right now, we're not in a recession right now. Right now, we're in a transition where we are going to go into a place of stable and steady growth, and that's going to be our focus.
But we don't know that for sure. Joining us right now is former Kansas City Federal Reserve President and CEO Thomas Hoenig. He is the former FDIC Vice Chairman, a distinguished senior fellow at the Mercatus Center. And I should point out, Thomas, you were among the very lone dissenters, the lone dissenter throughout 2010 when the Federal Reserve was spewing out all of these easy money policies that we are all paying for today. Thanks for being here this morning, Thomas.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you again.
So
good morning.
What are your thoughts? Can we actually know that we're not in a recession right now? We know that we had a contraction in the first quarter. The Atlanta Federal Reserve is looking for zero growth in the second quarter. We may very well be in a recession right now. How does it feel to you?
Well, I think if we're not in a recession, we are certainly slowing towards a recession, it feels like. And that's understandable. I mean, we've had this very significant inflation. We've had world conflict in which it's affected supplies and trade conflict, not just the Ukraine war. And then you have to correct for some very extensive fiscal policies following the pandemic, and then monetary policy excess. So now you're tightening like a factor of 7 here in the last 3 months in terms of interest rates going from 25 basis points to 175, heading towards above 2. And you have quantitative tightening. So that's going to create a great deal of reduction in liquidity, reduction in borrowing because of the cost increases, which we see in the home market right now. And then that creates its own volatility and uncertainty. So I'd say recession is a fair call. Whether we're in it right now, I don't know, but I think we're pretty close.
So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen claims that the Fed can effectively fight inflation without raising unemployment and without taking us into recession. But Thomas, what are your thoughts on the real important questions to ask this morning when Jay Powell is up on Capitol Hill? I mean, you mentioned the quantitative tightening. This is a really important point. It's not just the fact that the Fed is raising interest rates, but it's also unwinding of that $9 trillion balance sheet.
Right. The question that I would ask Chairman Powell is, what is the Fed's plan going forward? I mean, you changed from 50 basis points to 75. You let it be known a couple of days before. Is that your new plan? What is happening with quantitative tightening? You don't discuss it. What's its impact going to be? I think those are extremely important questions. And if the Fed doesn't know the answers to that, they at least should be studying how this is going to affect the economy. And I've not heard him talk about that as much as I think would be helpful. And is he going to really stick to the plan as unemployment rates start to rise? And they will. We see where offers are being pulled back. I read that this morning. So what is the Fed's? Are they going to stick to the plan through thick and thin? What would change their mind? Those are the kinds of questions I'd press, I think, today.
Thomas, we were in a period of slowdown when the Federal Reserve was beginning the tightening, the quantitative easing, and you dissented and were against putting all of this free money and stimulus out there. What did you see, and what do you think at this point the Federal Reserve has to do to reverse this situation now that we are up against 41-year high inflation?
Well, I think somehow the only discipline in monetary policy is that committee. There is no other rule-based system out there. So they have to be thinking longer term than they have been. And my point is that when you extend money that aggressively as they did in 2010, you create consequences, if not price inflation. And I didn't argue that it would necessarily be only price inflation, but asset inflation. So now you have the 8% inflation, and I don't know of an easy way, perhaps they do, of bringing that inflation back down towards 2% or less without causing a recession. I mean, they were so far behind the curve, and you cannot implement a crisis policy, which they did with a great financial recession, and now with a pandemic. And then it's not just that you put it in during the crisis, but you maintain that policy well after the crisis, which they did in 2010, and now they did it again in 2021, and not get some really negative consequences. And that's now being shown in both asset and price inflation. And now there's a massive tightening, which I think will disrupt the economy further, and unavoidably so.
I mean,
so I don't see any easy solution.
Yeah.
I don't see a mild, soft landing coming our way, frankly. I may be wrong. I hope I am. I don't think.
Thomas, I don't understand why just a few weeks before they actually started raising rates, they were actually still buying assets, expanding the balance sheet. I mean, how is that possible?
Well, that's a very fair question to ask. I think that it was clear that the economy was in recovery, and I know pandemic was an issue and they were uncertain about it. But those are that is outside the monetary policy control. So when you then do fiscal policy and you monetize all the spending, and you see this buildup in inflation and people talking and being concerned about it, and then ignore it until March of 2022, I don't understand that. And that's because partly there is no rule-based monetary policy. It's these individuals with their own biases, their own experience or lack of experience making these decisions. And I think that is why we have these errors, because you're in the moment, and the human nature is to take the short run look at things, and therefore you massively increase this money supply rather than say, wait a minute, what about 2 years from now or 3 years from now? What this going to lead to? And that's really I'll say a flaw in the process of monetary policy, and that is not having a long-run view.
Well, not having a long-run view, and also perhaps getting mired in politics. I mean, let's face it. When Jay Powell was telling us it's transitory, it's temporary, he was also looking at a reappointment period that he was hoping Joe Biden was going to reappoint him to another term, which he did. Did any of that play into the fact that for a year he told us it was transitory? I mean, how do you miss that? You knew it.
Well, I don't know what was in Jay Powell's mind at the time, but certainly politics does enter into monetary policy. It's clearly so. The presidents don't really want to see interest rates rise quickly in most circumstances. The Congress doesn't really want to. They also want the Fed to monetize the debt. I mean, in other words, I can spend my money, I borrow it. The Fed keeps interest rates low by bringing that onto their balance sheet. Those are all political factors that go into the deliberation, kind of sub rosa, if you will, but it's always on their mind. It certainly was on my mind during that period.
Yep.
And those are the factors that you have to get through. And without a rule-based system, those things are going to sometimes dominate, and they certainly have over the last decade and a half.
Thomas, you're doing really important work, and we appreciate you. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.